Hello, Nick Grimshaw here, and welcome to my 2021 year-end review. And I know you might be saying, well, Nick, it's a little late. This is getting on to mid-January now. Why are you still wanting to do a review? And I really wanted to share with you some of the big wins from this year for me and what they meant and what they mean, and maybe help you reflect on some of the things that happened to you in 2021. And then I'm going to go over really focusing on books this year. So I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the books I read this year and why they were important to me, and why I think reading is like the number one skill that we all should be using, because we have such a beautiful abundance of positivity available to us to help change that mindset from negative to positive. So if you've spent 2021 with me or have an idea of what my work is like, you know that I focus on positive affirmations, gratitude, mindfulness, and meditation. And for the past year, I really focused in on the first two, affirmations and gratitude. And we're going to be doing more of that this year. And the reason I focus there is because that's the critical tipping point, if you will. Once you get to that point where you're thinking more positively about your life, then that's when the magic begins to happen. And you begin to see the world differently. Not because your world has changed, and I've talked about this a lot. It's not because your world has changed. It's because the way you look at your world has changed, and everything in it has a new look to it because you're looking at it with a new set of eyes. And to me, that's the importance of focusing on the past, 2021, what you learned from it, what you're going to take into 2022 with you, and how you're going to aspire to become that person of your dreams, the person you dream of being. So the first thing I want to do is share one of my struggles, one of my really big struggles, and I think from what I read and see and hear, it's a struggle of a lot of people out there. And that is all those nice qualities, those being patient, being kind, being generous, being compassionate, all those things. For me, people look at me and say I'm those things, that I am a patient person, and I am a patient person, that I am compassionate, and I feel compassion every day, and that I express kindness, that I exude kindness. And all of these qualities, these plus qualities, my strengths are gratitude, appreciation of beauty and excellence, justice, sense of equity, spirituality, faith, the belief in purpose, that we have a purpose, and also that I'm curious and interested in the world. Those are all strengths that I've learned this year from doing some various things, and you'll a little bit more about that later as I get into the books and how they really impacted my life this year. But first, to go back to talking about these qualities that you think you possess, and outwardly people see you expressing them. But when it comes to yourself, myself, sometimes compassion is nowhere to be found. Kindness is nowhere to be found. Generosity is nowhere to be found. Positivity is nowhere to be found. Because, and I think most of us end up being our harshest critics. And we can be brutal with ourselves. And this year, or this past year, 2021, it's one of my biggest takeaways. When I went home, finally got home from 2 years in Panama, because I couldn't get home to Canada and see my family and my friends. And when I finally got home and I actually sat down with my accountant, we decided to close the books on a beautiful summer morning and restart afresh this year in 2022. But part of doing that was this constant criticism of myself, that I didn't have what it takes. I don't have the qualities that it takes. I'm lacking in something. I'm not capable in some way. I suck at doing things. I suck at this, that, and everything. And if you have listened to yourself and you've done this to yourself, you know what I'm talking about. And it's simply not true. And that's the other part of the equation. We tend to go overboard on the negatives of ourselves. We can be the kindest, compassionate person going until it comes to ourselves. So somewhere during the year I resolved, and a part of it was when we closed those books and decided that we'd restart in the new year. I decided that I had to be kinder, more gentle with myself, and that I needed to work on that part of really looking critically and negatively at everything that I did. And if you're in the same boat, and I know a lot of people are, then I urge you to dig out some affirmations, to write out a plan, and to really work on that part of yourself, to be compassionate to yourself. Now you've shown that you can be compassionate to other people. Now it's time to show that you can be compassionate to yourself. And in fact, I think, as with all things, what you learn to love yourself, number one, is one of the ideas that if you love yourself, then loving others is a possibility. But until you love yourself, then being really able to love another is really difficult. So anyway, that was my big learning, to let go of this anger about myself, if you will, and to focus more on being kinder to myself. And I've changed a lot of my habits that I have over the year and really tried to focus in on doing the things that are going to change my attitude about myself and my work. Because I tell you, I have often thought I didn't have the magic. Whatever it is that all those other people have, comparing to others is another really bad thing. I don't have I don't have that magic that some other people seem to have. And it's simply not true. I have the magic. So do you. The magic is within us. It's within you. It's always been there. It's for us to bring it forth and to appreciate and love, have compassion for, kindness towards. We all have the magic in us. And I think probably that's the big thing to take away from all of this year, is that we have the magic in us. And speaking of magic, this year, 2021, or we're in 2022 now, but I'm talking about 2021, was the best reading year I have ever had. So at 72 years old, I don't think I'm giving up a secret here. At 72 years old, I had the best reading year of my life. I read the best stuff that I have ever read. The most inspiring stuff, the most uplifting stuff, the most heartwarming stuff that I've ever read. And I want to share a little bit of those findings with you. Part of the reason that happened, because if we're looking at the exercise, what went well, and what went well in 2021, something I suggest that you all take time and write down what went well and why did that happen. And so for me, why did I experience this amazing influx of incredible books this year? 2021. When I say this year, I'm talking about 2021. So just so I don't have to keep correcting myself. So what I did was I became far more intentional about what I wanted to read. Rather than trusting completely to fate, I set about writing out a list of what I would like to read based on recommendations, what I'd seen from friends, and also leave space for books to find me. So instead of going out and searching and struggling to find a book to read that I really wanted to read, I allowed books to find me. And I think that was the biggest difference in 2021, is that I didn't spend hours and hours on Amazon trying to find the books that were going to inspire me or give me inspiration, or get into one of those endless searches trying to find something. This year, it was different. And one of the things is, I definitely wanted to listen to new voices. And this especially came true in the fiction area. So, again, I recommend that you read widely. You don't limit yourself or restrict yourself, because the connections that magically happen come from, it could be a piece of fiction you're reading, a piece of poetry, it could be a really technical book, and all of a sudden this magic happens and things link up from different books. So not only read widely, but have 2 or 3 or 4 books on the go at once. And I'm going to spend more time this year on explaining the magic that happens when you do that. But anyway, I have my trusty notes here. And one of the things is top new authors. For me, they may not be new to you, but to me this year, they were new to me. Whew. And they were the most compassionate, tender, loving voices that thrilled me no end. And so I'm going to just give you the name of the 5 authors that really moved me emotionally this year. T.J. Cloon, Becky Chambers, Glenda Vanderhaar, Alex Harrow, and Arkady Martin. Now they may be names you've never heard, and they'll be in the below in the blog post. I will include them there, and maybe a couple of recommendations for their books. They actually, no, they weren't all science fiction. They were different authors. But what stood out is the warmthness of the characters, the emotions, the portrayals of life with that, I think, theme: compassionate love, understanding, heartwarming. They were all books of that nature. So for those 5 people, T.J. Cloon, Becky Chambers, Glenda Vanderhaar, Alex Harrow, and Arkady Martin. A shout out to all of you for enriching my life this year, and hopefully for you that you get a chance to read one or two of the books these amazing authors have written. They are well worth the time. So the top 5 fiction come from these writers. So the first one is, and pretty much the first book I read last January was The 10,000 Doors of January. Wow. I don't know how I stumbled across this book. New author, never heard of this person before. It is amazing. It's well written. It's that language, the fun with words, a way with using the language that sparks the magic within you. The next one was Where the Forest Meets the Stars. And when I first started reading it, it kind of had a fantasy, science fiction-y tone to it. But as you read into it and you learn more and more about what's going on, it's an amazing story of healing between 2 different people and their struggles and their progress towards coming to understand and love each other. Beautiful book. Beautiful book. I believe it was, and this was Glenda Van de Haar. The first one was Alex Harrow. The next one was The House on the Carillion Sea by T.J. Cloon. And I don't want to tell you too much about the story except to say that we are all different, and yet we tend to look at things that are different from us with suspicion, anger, distrust. And in this book, it's a story about, I think it's 5 very special orphaned children. Very, very special. And the story is an incredible, uplifting story about the power of love and the danger of allowing our prejudices to form our opinions. And the next one is a psalm for the wild built. The Psalm for the Wild Built. This is almost like poetry. It's a short book. It's beautifully written. It's totally unusual. Something I've never read before, and you kind of have to read the book to get the feel for it. And I read a lot of, that was Becky Chambers, and I read a lot of her books this year too. So look in the notes in the blog below this video and you'll see some of my recommendations. And the final one is a memory called Empire by Arkady Martin. And words, the words fail me to describe to you what this mind-expanding book is all about. And it's something that I would highly recommend that you look up. So look for the show notes in that. Excuse me. The next is nonfiction, my top 5 nonfiction books of the year. I'm sorry. I should have water here, but I don't. Note to self, make sure you have water when you're recording something. Nonfiction, Think Like a Monk. And this is an incredible book full of practical ideas and exercises that you can use. So Think Like a Monk, Mindset, Flourish, SPQR, the history of Rome, and the SPQR stands for the Senate and the people, the Roman people. And finally, Be Here Now by Ram Dass. So, what I thought would be the #1 book, which I thought was Think Like a Monk, which was incredible. Myself and a couple of students studied this book together, and it was an incredible journey. Mindset was highly recommended to me, and if you haven't read Mindset and you're doing anything in the field of personal growth, spiritual journey, you need to read Mindset. And in the Mindset, they talk about a fixed mindset and I'm thinking off the top of my head here, and it's a creative mindset, an expansive mindset. So, really important that you read. The History of Rome, the reason why I love this book is because the moment you start reading the book, it's like you are actually living in the Roman Empire. And not only that, but it's like it's right here, right now. And that we think that that empire, 2000 in the past, was really, really different than our civilization today. And when you read this book, you realize that not much has really changed. And what I learned from the book, The History of Rome, is that it was sort of an accidental empire. It wasn't somebody plotting out to conquer the world like who was it? The Greek guy. My mind's gone. Who was the one who wanted to conquer the world? It wasn't like that. It didn't go out to conquer the world. That wasn't the plan. And yet they conquered the known world at the time. So it's like bringing the past into the present so that it's a living, breathing thing, and you can recognize the structure of our own society goes back to that Roman era. So much of what we have today is based on the Roman civilization at the time. And finally, Be Here Now, which is a book I swore I would read in 2021. I hadn't read it when it was really popular in the 60s and 70s, and I wanted to read it. And it takes you deep into spirituality, but Ram Dass has a way of cutting to the chase and to cut through all of this mumbo jumbo and get you down to what it really means. So those are my 5 fiction books, but I have to give, of those 5 books, Flourish is the most outstanding, most influential book of that year for me. I have used what I've learned from that book in so many ways. And Flourish is the start of PERMA, which is positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. Those 5 things create a sense of well-being within us. So they formed a lot of my thinking, the things that I've recommended this year, the exercises that I use and give to people to use. Even when I did my 2022 planning strategies, we use that in that session to judge our goals against PERMA. So if there's one book that you want to read this year that will really change the way you look and feel about your own personal happiness and your own well-being, I recommend this book. And all the information will be in the show notes below. Okay, and I think that kind of... and then I wanted to talk about the 2 people who influenced my life the most this year, and I think One of them is Tanya Eliza. I did a course with Tanya Eliza, and it was amazing. And I learned from her, perfect is the enemy of done. So she continued always through all the sessions, is done is better than perfect. Don't waste your time trying to get it perfect. Just get it done. And so I took that away from me as well this year. And if you want to look her up, I'll put a link to Tanya Eliza below. And then the other person is Matt Ragland. Matt Ragland really influenced me in regards to organization, how to organize, but most importantly, how to write smart notes. And it's something that I've struggled with. I have notes everywhere, in my computer, in my journals, in my reader, all the highlights, the notes, but they're scattered everywhere and they're really hard to work with. So when he mentioned smart notes, it started a whole chain of reaction for me. And now I'm working on using a smart note system, and I'll put again a link below to the book and to the video so that you can, if you're interested in something like that, that you can go and take a look. Anyway, that's my overview of the year, and I hope it helps in some way. It's mainly, in a way, a record of my own 2021 that I can come back and look at and remember what 2021 meant for me. Because, folks, it was a tough year. We're into our second official year of COVID-19, and there was a time there towards the end of 2020 we thought things would open up. And then all the variants started to happen and everything that started to happen. I lived here in Panama for 2 years under COVID-19. Once they closed the airport here, I couldn't get home. And once they opened the airport here, I couldn't really go home because they were requiring like stay in a hotel that cost an enormous amount of money. So I stayed here. I preferred not to travel during that time anyway. But finally, in August, I did get to go home. And I went to Vancouver and visited all my wonderful friends in Vancouver. I took a course on study technology there, which you'll be hearing more about as we go along. And I got home to see family and friends at home. So all in all, it was an incredible year. Finally to fly again. I did a heck of a lot of flying in 2021, more than I've probably done in most of my life in a single year. So very extraordinary year for all of us. And if you struggled in 2001, go back to what I said at the beginning. Give yourself a break. Be kind to yourself. It hasn't been easy for any of us to live through this time of pandemic. And whatever we've been able to accomplish in those 2 years, we should give ourselves a big, big hug of celebration for our perseverance, for our bravery and courage, for facing the obstacles that have come up, for staring down adversity. It hasn't been easy, but we've used the tools, and we've used what we've learned to get through. And now we're looking at 2022 with the hope that this is the last year of the pandemic, but who knows? The important thing is that we continue to persevere, that we continue to learn and grow. The most important thing that you can do in your life is to continue to grow and learn and express yourself more fully as that person who you really are, your authentic self, to find a way to express that, to overcome the obstacles in being able to express to another and to others who you really are. And that takes courage, it takes motivation, it takes learning and overcoming fear and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm looking forward to 2022. We have 2022. We have an amazing lineup for 2022. And I think that together we can create the most amazing year ever. Thank you. Remember to dream big, live inspired. Hi, Nick Gribshaw here, and welcome to our channel. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. Doing those things really help us track better with YouTube. And if you're interested, click the notification button for notification when we upload a new video. Thank you so much for doing that. Have a good day.